So at OSH we offer the Edexcel A-Level Geography course, and we'd recommend that you go online and have a look at the specification for it. The reason why Mr. Parker and Mr. Williams have chosen to do the Edexcel specification is that it focuses in on three different areas. So it tries to make sure that students are aware of the current affairs that are really impacting geography at the moment, and the ones which are going to impact geography on the forthcoming generations. So population, climate change, and the growth of megacities is a big focus for the Edexcel exam board. So you'll learn about that as part of the course. Secondly, you'll be focusing really on a skill-based A-level, so you'll look at teamwork analysis, ICT, communication, literacy, numeracy, research, particularly in that fourth unit, which is the non-exam assessment. And finally, the course is specifically designed so that it can help with people going into certain careers. Geography is one of our most popular subjects currently, with Year 12 going into Year 13, and perhaps the reason for that is because the course can be used for all manner of different jobs, all manner of different careers, and it combines well with pretty much all subjects. So if you're looking to do other humanities-based subjects, there's a certain degree of overlap. With scientific-based subjects, there's a certain degree of overlap as well. Geography is that unique course where it is a humanities-based subject, but it's also striving for objectivity, and therefore it has that balance between a science and objective-based study and the subjectiveness of a humanities-based subject. The course is divided into 4 different units, but you'll notice that on the screen we're only focusing in on papers 1 and 2. The reasons for that is paper 4, or unit 4, is the non-exam assessment, and paper 3 is a synoptic based paper, and that's something that you do in Year 13 once you've looked at all the content for paper 1 and 2. Now there are a few different options that you can study for papers 1 and 2, and the decisions that Mr. Parker and Mr. Williams have come to are on the screen now, and so I'm just going to talk about some of the topics that you'll be covering in papers 1, 2 and in that synoptic element of paper 3. So firstly, one of the big topics that you'll be looking at, particularly in Year 12 for paper 1, are tectonic processes and hazards. So you'll be looking at why some locations in the world, particularly those around the Pacific Rim, are more at risk from tectonic hazards. Why do these particular tectonic hazards develop into disasters, and really how successful certain countries are in their management of these tectonic hazards and disasters. If we're looking at specific examples, Japan would be an interesting one for you to have a look at in preparation, and how they're preparing for some of the tectonic hazards that come from earthquakes, including tsunamis. As part of paper 1 as well, you'll also look at glaciated landscapes. Now this is one of the options that you can look at as part of the Edexcel A-Level course, and really this is a really important one if we're focusing in on that issue of climate change, because climate change is having a direct impact on the formation and the continuation of glaciated landscapes. So we'll look at what processes operate within glacier systems, how glacial processes contribute to the formation of glacial landforms and landscapes, and how they are managed today. So if you're looking for a bit of additional research and trying to get ahead, it might be useful to look at areas of South America like Patagonia. It might be useful to look at Iceland as well. Glaciated landscapes and change is a tricky concept to get your head around, but it's one that the department at OSH specialise in. For paper 2, and something that you'll be looking at in Year 12, is this big topic of human geography, which is globalisation. And if you're studying economics as well, if you're studying history, if you're studying business, there is a certain degree of overlap, but in geography it forms the basis of one of the major units of study. So we're looking at why globalisation has really been this key buzzword over the past 50 years or so, and why it's accelerated in recent decades. We're going to look at the impacts of globalization for specific countries, different groups of peoples, cultures, for example, and trying to think about where globalization is going to go next. So how should different players, key stakeholders, respond to the challenges of globalization? It'd be really interesting to look at this particular unit in a post-COVID-19 approach, or a current COVID-19 approach, because if you're looking at China, for example, and America, it's interesting to see America are becoming increasingly isolated under their president, and how they want to perhaps go for this approach of autarky, whereas China's desire to create a almost a Chinese empire based on services is a real hot topic in this globalization study. For paper 2 as well, you'll be looking at regenerating places, and a really good example to look at for this would be Birmingham. Birmingham, which had a reputation 20, 30 years ago as being quite dilapidated, being quite run down, and how successful the regeneration has perhaps been in the different quarters of Birmingham and this quarter idea that they had. You'll look at different examples, and there will be field work as part of that. You can see that they've got some of the geography students there by the bull ring. Regeneration, as well as this word, is how do we decide which areas need regenerating? What kind of field studies do we need to conduct in order to ensure that the regeneration is going to be feasible? As part of papers 1 and 2 as well, you'll also cover a number of different topics. You'll be looking at the water cycle, water insecurity. You'll have a good understanding about flooding, flood defences. So that will hopefully continue on from some of the content that you looked at GCSE study. You'll be looking at the carbon cycle and energy, and if you're doing chemistry or physics, for example, in combination with geography, this can be really, really useful when you're looking at that. So we'll be trying to think about how the world can perhaps become more green in its energy approaches, whether or not that's needed to a certain level. It's part of this overall approach of looking at climate change as well. And as I've alluded to as well, we'll be looking at the superpowers for paper 2, so that's part of your globalization study. So having a good understanding about how China works, how America works, how they've expanded into the world's superpowers would be a really useful exercise for you to do over the summer. So if you've got a bit of time, it might be useful to bookmark this Netflix series, which I think is called History 101, and there's a specific episode on that called The Rise of China, and it's talking about how China's economy boomed in the 1990s and why it was able to really emerge as this superpower, and really how it's going to overtake America in the next few years. Also in paper 2, you'll look at this topic, which is, it really shows the breadth of geography and the range of different areas that you'll have to consider. So you'll look at migration, identity and sovereignty. So if you're doing politics as well as one of your subjects, or perhaps you're not going to do politics but you're interested, this particular component for paper 2 is really, really relevant at the moment, looking at independence movements. So things like the Catalonia independence movement, the current Brexit scenario, the rise of nationalism and populism, they all integrate into this paper 2 study. So hopefully you've got a bit of a flavour about what papers 1, 2 and 3 will cover, but it's also worth pointing out that you'll have to do an independent investigation, which makes up 20% of your overall course. Now this is a fieldwork based exercise. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next 2 years in a COVID-19 world, because at the moment there's currently discussions about how fieldwork can operate within geography, but for the purposes of you, and hopefully we would hope that you would have the opportunity to do this. Fieldwork is something that students do have to get involved in. They will have to evidence independent analysis and evaluation of data, and that's where we're looking at the objectivity that geography tries to reach as well. But you'll have to supplement that with extended writing. So this is a really useful exercise. If you look at one of the other videos about co-curricular options as well, you'll find something called the EPQ. And a lot of geography students do the EPQ because they find that if they've done their independent investigation for geography, it's quite straightforward to approach the EPQ in a similar sort of way. So as I've alluded to already, the department comprises of 2 members of staff, Mr. Parker and Mr. Williams. The setup of the department is pretty crystal clear. They've got their own specialties, but they do work together, and really the numbers which you can see on that screen speak for themselves. Geography is one of our most successful departments when it comes to success for data. So if you're looking at last year, for example, 65% of students got an A star, an A or a B, and 25% got an A star and an A. Considering that we don't have huge cohorts of students, that's a very impressive record, and you can see going back that is a continuation year on year. So every single year we have this consistent track record of strong results. The field trips are integrated throughout the course as well, and they're a useful exercise to bring students together. Myself, I did geography at A level, and I'll remember my field studies trips. Great way of making new friends, but also understanding how these skills work in the real environment. And it's also worth pointing out as well that the department has really strong links to the Royal Geographical Society. Mr. Williams is a chartered member, and as a result it means that the department is able to get guest speakers to come in. So this past year we've had some guest speakers come in and speak to the geography students. It's also testament to the department that a lot of students tend to choose geography as a subject that they wish to pursue at undergraduate level.
So, first of all,
in A-level geography, we do physical and human topics. It's a split between. So in physical we do the carbon cycle, the hydrological cycle, and tectonics and glaciers. And then in human we do globalisation and diverse places and regeneration. So it is a good split.
And then the example and structure class will talk about investigations.
So 80% of our A-level is examined, and then the other 20% is coursework. And the coursework you get to choose what you want to do. It's a really good opportunity to be independent and decide on something you're interested in and study that. And then the exam splits, we've got a physical paper, a human paper, and then we have a synoptic paper where we link everything together and we analyse it in proportion to each other.
Good. Extra support, no pass services.
There are dedicated times for extra support sessions, especially in year 13 for exams. And then anything you struggle with, at any point if there's like a question you'd like to ask, you can always just drop the teacher an email and let's see them at lunch or after school. I've really enjoyed studying geography at OSH. It's given a real environmental basis within my learning. I now want to go on and do environmental conservation at university. And it's something you can link to your everyday life and you see happening around you, and you can sort of learn the science behind the processes that are going on.